Okay, I'm here today with Gavin Coopey. Gavin, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, absolutely.
So Gavin's is a director at More Strategic, a consultancy specialising in strategy, brand and supporter engagement for the for-purpose sector. Is that right?
That's right.
Gavin's held senior roles at Comic Relief and the Diana, Princess of Wales Memorial Fund and Cancer Research UK, where he was development director for innovation and brand during a major sector merger, which we'll talk about in more detail later. Nowadays, he works with a wide range of organisations to build supporter-led strategies, deepen impact and improve cultural alignment across teams. So there's lots to dive into today. Yeah. And in terms of the name of this podcast, he came up with a great one, which is You're Gavin a Laugh. So hopefully, as long as this is not too boring, that'll come through. So, Gavin, first question. As a long-suffering Manchester United fan, you've watched a global powerhouse slip from glory to a kind of confused mediocrity with a leadership vacuum at the top, shirt sponsor deals falling over, and brand credibility questioned. What can for-purpose organisations learn about this regarding the importance of entering partnerships when their brand is strong, not when they're in crisis and their strategic value is diminished?
Well, I think you just said it. I mean, they should be doing it when they're at the top of their game, so to speak. Look, on a personal note, it's nice to be a proper football fan again, not having constant success. I was always slightly jealous of my father because he was. I don't know if you've heard of this team, West Bromwich Albion, but he grew up supporting them.
Okay.
I always felt slightly sad for him, having to put up with their serial failure. And, no, anyway. But look, I think the other things to take away from that, which is really about what is your essence and your point of difference, okay, which is what I always talk about with brand. Like your awareness level, as Manchester United is proving, is not necessarily what will really drive people to your brand. What makes the difference in your brand is differentiation, and particularly that thing that makes you unique. So United's brand is about young players. They've been playing, a youth squad player has played in every single team since 1958, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
In the first division in the Premier League, and that's the essence of that's the essence of the club, and it's about attacking football. And really, I think it's lost its way as much in that as anything else, and that just shows they don't care. But you can have as much as well as you like. It's down to success, and therefore, you see more Manchester City shirts, you see more Liverpool shirts out on the streets in Australia because they're having more success. One could argue they're all equally well known, but it's really about success. And for me, success comes from differentiation and being consistent about it.
Okay, and that's a message, I guess, for non-profits when thinking about their brand.
It is. I think I don't like it when people worry about their awareness too much.
Uh-huh.
For me, it's the gap between your awareness and your differentiation. Right, so my organisation might be on 40%, awareness, but if my differentiation and that statement that I want, organisation X is better at this than anybody else, and that's at 35%, or at 80% of the people who know me, that is more important than the fact I'm at 40% awareness. So it's really what's your point of difference, how do you express it, and how are you consistently expressing it over time, and it's important in commercial branding. It's super important for us because we have so few opportunities to actually talk in the public domain in a brand way.
I remember a great fundraising debate being held on maybe by Pareto or someone years ago between the value of brand awareness and I think it was profitability or return on investment. Yeah. And it was ultimately the argument for brand awareness failed when the person arguing on behalf of income from fundraising said, "I'll tell you what, give me a bucket of brand awareness and a bucket of cash, and tell me which one's best going to help us deliver on our mission." So, okay, everyone thought, you win.
But interestingly enough, we are literally resurfacing that debate on September the 13th.
Oh, really?
It's such a cracker. So the old brand versus fundraising. Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. So in the UK, through Cancer Research UK, you're part of one of the UK's biggest non-profit mergers, certainly at the time. What lessons did you take from that experience, both about what works and what can get in the way of a merger?
Yeah, look, I think the thing that worked was that and a lot worked. It was incredibly successful. When you imagine, I think it was the third biggest and the 10th biggest charity in the UK merging, which is a massive thing. What very few people know is they were one organisation in 1933 and split because one group thought that basic was a better way to go, basic research, and the other went clinical. They came back together in 2000 because of the power of bench to bedside translational research being about bringing those together.
Yeah.
There was a good agreement at very senior level. The chair of one and the CEO of the other became the chair and CEO.
Okay.
And it was well organised. It was well set up in advance. I think it was still, there were so many power plays. And I think the biggest thing with mergers is being honest, okay? And at the end of the day, I'm not talking out of turn, but I was working in a fundraising and marketing department. I was one of 9 directors. We had 1,500 people in fundraising and marketing. So
wow,
that's
massive.
Huge. Yeah. So 1,000 were in the retail chain, but we still had 500 in non-retail. But that leadership of that group was almost exclusively from Imperial. Whereas communications, the leadership of communications was almost exclusively from Cancer Research Campaign.
Okay.
And I think you have to just be honest about what skills are being brought by which organisation, which really has the power and the strength. And every merger has elements of strength and relative weakness between the organisations. And I think we're not honest enough sometimes about takeovers. We can talk about that later, but I think it wasn't a takeover. It really was a true merger. But I think the other big thing that I learned was actually that we often agreed that the organisation will only properly merge when very few of the existing people from either organisation were still there. And when you consider that a lot of staff now last 2 or 3 years in a job, in reality, I think we had 30 to 40% new staff within 4 years.
Wow.
So 30 to 40% of people who had no loyalty to one or the other, including myself, because I came in 6 months afterwards.
Okay.
And I think that is a lesson, is like it won't really fully play out till you've just got new people in the equation.
Is that because people struggle to let go of whatever their history is coming into that merge?
Yeah, very much so. And I always talk about it as being, that cultural thing where you just know your organisation very well. So I remember going to one of my team quite early in the piece and saying, look, I need some financial advice on this particular project. Who should I go to in the finance department? And he said, well, go and see this guy. And I said, but he's not actually relevant at all to the project. He said, no, but he's from the organisation I used to work for and he's very helpful.
Right, okay.
And also a broad thinker, so he'll take it on board and give you good advice. So you can't get away from that internal knowledge that comes with having been part of one or the other.
One of the things I've noticed post-merger at the arthritis movement is the language people use change, and where they might have referred to us being a one of the 2 pre-merged partners. Now people are referring to when Arthritis New South Wales or Arthritis Queensland did that, as opposed to we, because the identity is now wrapped up in the new merged entity, which I think is a really good sign that the merged entity is now the only reality for people. Yeah, which is really encouraging.
I think that's a good cultural litmus test, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. You said it was a very successful merge. What were the metrics for success?
Really, finances.
Okay.
And the ability to grow dramatically by combining those 2 organisations. But on the fundraising side, I would say that is it, and marketing side. But in reality, the key thing about it was a mission-led merger. So much as our objectives were very much about increasing the income, and that was actually very well achieved, it was a mission-led, one organisation did clinical research, one organisation did basic research. It was clear that those definitions were becoming irrelevant because it was about combining the 2.
Yeah.
They were lucky that one organisation had a grant-led approach and grant-funded. The other one had centres. So that was not a difficult merger, because they didn't really have they had complementary, not exactly the same types of sort of structures in the way they did their research.
Yeah.
So I think all of those things come into play in thinking about it, but I think it has to be mission-led to work.
Do you know how long that the process of merger took, either from first conversation and a twinkle in someone's eye through to execution, or at least from the point of public commitment through to completion?
I think even from public commitment, it was probably a year and a half, and from initial conversations, who knows, 5 years. I mean, I think they're lost in the mist of time, really. Because of the size, I think that mergers now in the present marketplace are happening much more quickly because of financial pressures.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you talked about the success measure there was primarily financial, and certainly it's one of the main drivers now for collaborations and consolidations. What are the other compelling drivers for organisations to collaborate or merge today, other than just the money?
Oh, look, I think scale and reach, and I think increasingly with a very fragmented, complex sector. Again, this goes back for me to the differentiation point. I think organisations have to be clear on what's their real point of difference, their real point of uniqueness in a very complex and multifaceted marketplace, and where therefore they can be effective. And I think when you look at a lot of large organisations over the last few years, they've had a lot of mission creep. And so, particularly, let's talk about mental health. And health, mental health generally. It's a very broad issue. Somebody once said to me, we're not actually a mental health aware public. Like, there are thousands of different expressions of mental health. And so if you just say you're a mental health charity, what is your point of difference? Other than trying to own this massive group. Are you talking about schizophrenia? Or are you talking about, everyday anxiety? I mean, it's such a broad range.
Yeah.
And I think in that market in particular, you've got to be thinking about what is it that we really do that differentiates us here.
Okay.
And then I think there isn't I think not enough in the marketplaces around collaboration where you go, well, actually that's not our point of difference. It's not our most important area of offer. It doesn't fit our mission.
Yeah.
But this organisation over there does, and we've already got some great funding or whatever, and let's work with them to deliver it and get it kind of out of our operational remit in a way.
Yeah.
So I think there's a big opportunity for that, which nobody's taking.
So help it get done rather than do it ourselves.
Yeah, but also get organisations and people who are experts in that field. If it's just a tack on for you, find someone for whom that is a real area of expertise, and work with them, collaborate with them to deliver it more effectively.
Yeah, fantastic. Looking out across the Australian charity landscape, what are the standout examples you've seen for collaboration, organisations coming together meaningfully and for success? And if you know enough, what do you think made them work?
It's a difficult one because I saw you asked me this question in advance to think about, and I find it difficult to find really good examples of good collaborators. I think there are organisations like OzHarvest which have built a multifaceted operation which involves collaboration with multiple partners to deliver their mission, and I do think they're one of the few standouts. And it's about the fact of matching up your strengths and our strengths to make a partnership that actually works for both of us. And I think that true collaboration starts from that point of agreement, like how do I help you and how do you help me? That's the most important questions at the beginning of a collaboration. Yeah. And, you can see that there are organisations who work with OzHarvest who benefit from what OzHarvest does for them, and they definitely benefit from the brand value of OzHarvest on their trucks, etc. But I think that's an organisation that has to be reliant on collaboration to get its job done, and they've done it very well. So,
and it's distinct from the idea of a charity being a non-profit organisation being the charity partner and reliant upon the benevolence of a corporate entity. which is a short-term and very limited nature of relationship. Whereas actually, if you can fulfill a business need for a commercial partner in this context, then that allows growth and sustainability. And I think, I agree, Oz Harvest done that very well.
And I think that's a big challenge in the marketplace, because I think Australian corporates don't want to engage in a more than skin deep way with not-for-profits. I mean, I grew up in corporate partnerships. I was raising huge amounts of money from proper cause-related marketing on packs, etc. When I was at Red Nose Day, it just doesn't exist here, because I think corporates are not interested in engaging. They want the credit, but they don't want to have to put their brand at risk in a relationship with a charity. So there's very few true collaborations where there's a real point of difference that is about the commercial benefit to both partners.
Yeah.
And I think it's not a level playing field in Australia at all. I don't think it's a level playing field anywhere, to be fair.
Yeah.
But especially in Australia, for some reason, not-for-profits are not trusted in those relationships, I think, generally.
Interesting. Okay. So we talked a bit about brand there, and the potential value for for-purpose brand being aligned with a corporate entity. I want to explore brand a little bit more, because I know it's something you're very passionate about. Is there a role for organisations to think about their brand through the process of collaboration and merger, relative strengths and weaknesses, it being an asset or a risk? Can you unpick that a little bit for us?
Well, I think so. If, again, we go back to this point that it's really collaborations that are focused on that point of difference. I come back to this point. It's what are we good at? How do we want to say that in the marketplace, and what collaborations or partnerships might express that? And I think it also is being authentic to your mission. And I think that's crucial within a brand. There are brands that I know in the Australian marketplace that have paddled around because they haven't really got to what is it that sets us apart. And know that although they do a lot of collaborations and partnerships, I just think at the core of it is this missing question, which is, what is it you actually do that's differentiated, rather than just being a name on everybody's lips?
Okay.
So I think core is thinking, what do we want to say through a collaboration and partnership, which links back to your core, the core differentiating points you want to make, and therefore making those collaborations and partnerships useful and express that.
So we talked a bit about the importance of branding and differentiation of branding. Can you think of any great examples of Australian for-purpose organisations that have got that point of difference brand right?
Yeah, look, I think we're not far here from Cerebral Palsy Alliance's headquarters, and I think they have done a good job in really being very clear and focused in their brand and how they express it, and that their activities link into that, both from fundraising and from mission-led.
Yeah.
The challenge that they've had is working in the NDIS sector. You have to be able to offer services to everybody, living with a disability.
Yeah.
And that stretches that differentiation. But where they can express it, they do. And they're also a good example of a merger and a rebrand. And I think rebranding is a whole interesting area. And I think we have so little equity as charities. You really have to have a very, very, very good reason to change your name and to change your brand.
And they did, of course.
And they did.
15 years ago, they moved from the Spastic Centre, I think it was, back then, to Cerebral Palsy Alliance.
And kind of to an extent they had to, because of where that original name.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I did a piece of work ages ago for a great organisation called Minder. And if you grew up in South Australia, you'd know that somebody would call you a Minder in the school playground.
Yeah.
And so when I was first working with them, the board was going, well, we want to change our name. So we did a piece of research and we went like, well, there you are at 85% awareness across South Australia. It's not necessarily all positive awareness.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you can make that more positive, you are never going to get 85% awareness for your name back again.
Yeah.
And so that's what started the whole program for them around trying to change the way that people saw Minder.
Okay.
And there are very few organisations where I would go, I think you need a new name. Going back to something we talked about before, that's another part of merger discussions.
Yes.
Because I've seen mergers, which shall remain nameless, where it's been a takeover. And in all intents and purposes, it's a takeover. And a takeover by an organisation with a great brand name, which did what it said on the tin, but they gave that away to have a new name for the merger, when in fact they didn't have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a new name with no equity that's often nebulous and Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's the risk. You get a big branding agency in and they come up with something which doesn't mean anything to anybody. You've given away masses of equity. You've given 100 years of history away, just like that, and that is so hard to regain.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, I want to move on from branding and mergers now to innovation, which is something, again, I'm passionate about, particularly for organisations that are wrestling with long-standing, complex social problems. Like doing the same thing that you did last year is really going to produce a different result.
Yeah.
So you've worked across innovation as well as supporter insight and fundraising. How can organisations create space to innovate when collaboration might feel high risk and organisations are working at 1,000 miles an hour just to keep the plates spinning? How can organisations create that space to foster innovation?
Well, I think the two kind of can go hand in hand with collaboration. I suppose it's just slightly going off the point of the question, but I think you can transform the way you're seen and innovate by working with other people who are better in that space in a collaboration sense.
Yeah.
So that, collaboration quite often is a quick route to innovation.
Yes.
But I think innovation for me starts and finishes with culture. And so you have to create a cultural environment that fosters innovation, even if everybody's very busy. And that is about seeing our work differently. And I often think one of the challenges with innovation is that the moment you talk about innovation, people think blue sky, big ideas.
Okay.
And they sit at their desk or their home desk going, well, I can't have a big idea. Innovation is simply about doing your job better tomorrow, right? So if you find a new way of doing your job which is more effective, more efficient, more profitable, that is innovation. And I think by taking an approach like that, you help everybody understand it's and something incremental that we could all be doing in our day-to-day work. But then you start to ask that question bigger. How can we as an organisation be doing the big things better, more effective, more efficient? And you build a culture which asks that question all the time. And you separate, business as usual is the worst term in business, really.
Yeah.
Because there's no such thing as business as usual.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going out of business.
Yeah.
If that is, I do think though, and I was responsible for strategy and culture of innovation at Cancer Research UK, and I kind of say it was great to see 10 or 15 years later what they created, but it took 10 or 15 years to come out.
15 years to become an overnight success. Okay, closing reflections and takeaway messages. What guidance would you offer to boards or executives trying to decide if now is the right time to consider consolidation, collaboration, or even possibly a merger?
I think in the case of all of those, oddly, it's before you need to. Yeah, I think everything works better if you're doing it from a position of strength. And if you don't accept that, we're where we are and we're comfortable and we can just get away with, continuing the same way. Because all big, successful organisations are constantly going, how can we change? How do we need to change? And I think we're in a rapidly changing environment at the moment. And so nobody is going to be standing still. The worst place to be wanting to find a merger is when you're up against the wall and you're about to go out of business.
Yeah.
But that is when most people think about it.
Yeah, that's not a merger. That's the only last option as an alternative to voluntary administration. That 5 minutes to midnight thing, it's a reality. Several of the inquiries I've had over the last few weeks have been from organisations going, can't afford to do payroll in a month's time. Is there an opportunity for us to merge? And the answer was no. Like the opportunity was 6 months ago or 6 years ago. Yeah.
And I think that looking forward, particularly on mergers, and I think it is also about going back to that point. It's like what will add value to our mission, and what new areas should we be looking at? That drives all of innovation. It can drive collaboration. It could drive mergers. And I think that doing that from a position of strength, where you're looking at the next few years and saying where do we want to be is the best time to be considering any of those significant new initiatives.
Okay. I've put you on the spot and asked for some exemplars already today of brand differentiation. I'd like you also to think about a great example you've seen recently of innovation in the for-purpose sector, please.
Yeah, I think, again, it's more a mission-led innovation than marketing or fundraising. And it is One Door Mental Health, who over the last 5 or 6 years have brought in a self-organising teams model in how they deliver their NDIS, and as I understand it, have been very successful in delivering those services in that way. So you're talking about the whole model that comes really from Holland, where I think it started in aged care, where it's literally teams of up to 8 people who literally don't have a manager. They are self-organising, and Kathy Ballman, who was the CEO at the time, interestingly, she inherited the concept but made it work, and I think that it's quite a radical model. It's quite a radical way of running ourselves because we love being hierarchical.
Yeah, sure.
Not for profits,
safety, right?
Yeah, and lack of risk because that's our big thing, isn't it? I think it's quite an incredible program that they've created and developed an approach. And from my own knowledge, but there might be others out there, I think it's actually really quite unique. And I would think bringing it in any business would be difficult, but particularly in a not-for-profit space.
Interesting. Not familiar with that, but I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Okay, and I've heard about this thing called the Gavlov model of giving. Mainly because you told me about it. But can you explain what this thing is and why it's important, please?
And so we've done a lot of qualitative and quantitative research over time. Starting at Cancer Research UK, where we did some really good work around attitudes to and therefore responses to cancer and cancer's diagnosis.
Okay.
But I've always found it interesting how 2 people who ostensibly seem to be similar by demographics, one with an experience of similar, say, let's say a parent with cancer, one will get engaged, will give to a cancer charity, the other will be running away. So what explains this? So I've come up with a model which is gradually being worked on through the quantitative data as we go in different surveys. But basically, for me, it's about 3 things. There's values at the very bottom level. So, and there's look up Schwartz's universal values set. And that definitely explains a lot of why certain causes, like you're not going to support Oxfam, Greenpeace, etc., if you're not in a certain value quadrant or spend a lot of time there.
Makes sense.
So values is at the bottom. Then I think there's personality. So very much like, am I extrovert, introvert? Therefore, how do I engage with people? How much do I want to engage with people? And the third layer is life stage. So where am I at in my life stage? How fulfilled am I? How unfulfilled am I? What do I need? How do I have a sense of agency? What is it that I want from life, from relationships, from community, and who is my community and who do I care about? So layering all these 3 together, we are coming up with a universal model of who in the public engages, why they engage, and how to approach them in the right way to engage them with your cause. So that's pretty much quickly in a summary. Martin, my business partner, once jokingly called it the Gavlov model, which is a combination of Maslow's hierarchy, I think, and Pavlov's getting the dog to turn up for the food. So, yes, that's a quick explanation of Gavlov.
Love it. And Martin didn't try and shoehorn Martin in there. So, no. Okay. Brilliant. Yeah, no, it's a great model. Thanks for sharing.
And it will be out in the public domain much more clearly in the near future.
Great. Okay, very last question. Will Manchester United finish higher than 16th in the Premier League table next year?
Who knows?
Gavin, thanks so much for coming in and having this very unusual and wide-ranging conversation.
My pleasure.